Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's wait for the rest of the students to connect. We're going to be 13 in this chat, 12 students and me as a moderator. So let's give them a few more minutes to connect. Okay? So before we start, okay, anybody wants to say anything about their school, about this experience? What are you looking forward to?
It's hot here,
It's hot. Where are you?
Mexico. Well, Merida.
Merida. Well, yes. I'm in Monterrey, Mexico. So some days are hot, others are cold. Right now it's moderate. What about Navajo Prep? Where are you?
We're in Farmington, New Mexico.
Oh.
Yeah, it's cloudy here.
Mm-hmm. So what else? What else can you tell me about your school? Okay, anybody?
The food's not really that good here.
Okay, how
It
long?
is good, man.
Okay,
No, only very few times. Like the majority, no. Because they give us like these molletes, and the cheese looks like the kind of plastic you find in the street. But everything else is good about this school. The food's good though.
well, you will have to explain what molletes are because we're not all Mexican. So
Okay. So a mollete is like a piece of bread, and then you put beans on it, and normally you would put cheese, but like actual good cheese that came from something alive, not from a lab.
not a plastic cheese, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
But outside of that, everything else is good.
Can't relate. I've got great molletes at my school.
well, what about your experience in TOK? How long have you been taking this class?
Can you turn up your mic?
Yeah.
We have been studying here with TOK since about what, 6 months?
Probably.
We started about 6 months ago, and our teacher has been encouraging all this type of debates between classes, and he selected a few people for us to be here with you. Well, so we're very excited to be here, and it's something we have been doing quite a lot ago.
And
Yeah, she's gonna be the professional between the both of us here.
and what about but are you chatting online or you have discussions in class?
We have constant discussions on class. Like mostly every single class, we have a debate about the topic we're discussing for the day. So we have this part where the teacher tells us about the subject and the things we're gonna see, and we have this 10 or 15 minutes of debate at the end of every lesson, so we can make our points.
Oh, that's good. Okay, well, let me tell you something about myself. I've been a teacher, a TOK teacher for more than 25 years. I'm an assessor and I'm a teacher trainer. So I'm very glad to be here with you in a very different situation because I have never done anything like this. I've done a lot of things live. So let's see what we can do about it. Now, we are 9. You are 9, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're 8, and I guess I don't know if all the schools are represented. Is Celaya? Anybody from Celaya? So I think that's a school. And Colegio La Paz? Colegio Arjí? Okay, Constanza, thank you. Anybody, any other school? Madison? Okay. So it's okay. So I guess we're going to start with the rules, so we can get some time to discuss and have fun here. Okay. Now, I guess that you got a page like this in which you have the additional considerations. I don't know if you had it If you got a paper like this, I'm going to read it, and if you don't have it, just let me know, and maybe I can share I can share it with you. But it's very simple, and I guess that you will all know how to do it. Okay, so it says here. Okay, first of all, welcome all. We are pleased to count on your participation in the Knowledge Dialogues 2024, where you will play a key role in creating an environment of respectful and enriching conversations. That's very important. Respectful. Okay, so to ensure a smooth and productive experience, we ask you to consider the following aspects. Number one, respectful dialogue and reasoned arguments. Okay, nobody can talk when another one is talking. So please, we will encourage diversity of opinions, but I will let you know when to talk. Okay, nobody can interrupt anybody. Okay, and you will only have 90 seconds per intervention. So you have to be concise and focused to make the best use of your time. You can make additional knowledge questions that are related to the topic that we will be discussing, and we can exchange ideas. Now, the only thing is make sure that the knowledge questions are related to the original topic, because that will guide you also to your further considerations during your classes. Now, you have to pay active attention to your classmates or to your peers when they are talking without interrupting, and take note of significant opinions. Okay, when you hear something that captures your attention, you can take note and discuss it further. And we will take about 10-15 minutes at the end to draw conclusions. So, because I think that the most enriching part of this is that all of you will draw conclusions and will take something with you about this. Okay? Now, needless to say that the comments need to be pertinent. Okay? And personal examples are encouraged when you feel the need of saying so. Are there any questions about what I read? Yes? I don't hear anybody. Everything clear? Hello? Yes? Okay. Shakti Hernandez says everything clear. Okay. I don't see you all. I'm not very familiar with this. Okay. I'm just seeing everybody. Okay. Okay. So let's start by reading the knowledge question that we were assigned, and is human knowledge always necessary for the production of art? Okay, so before we start discussing, let's unpack the question. Who wants to start unpacking the question? Have you ever done this, unpacking the question? You know what it is or not? You can nod or say no, so I can see. You know what's unpacking a question? Yes? Okay, Nalanaya, okay, please let us know what is unpacking a question, okay? I cannot hear you. You have you're, okay.
Sorry, the mute button wasn't coming on. Unpacking the question is when you open the discussion up for everyone to interpret and to define different parts of the question.
Uh-huh. Okay, yes. Well, when you unpack a question means that you need to understand everything that is in the question. Okay, so here we have, is human knowledge always necessary for the production of art? Which terms do you think are a little bit confusing or a little bit ambiguous in this question? Anybody? Nobody think? Okay, yes, Regina, please.
Yes, so I think that the concepts that we need to first like discuss is like the definition of knowledge or the definition of art, because sometimes I think different people may have different meanings or interpretations about these concepts.
Okay, Regina, you're right. Okay, but not really a definition, but what's ambiguous, for example, about the concept of art? Okay, when you say art, okay, what do you mean when you say art? Yes, Regina.
I think that word or that concept can be sometimes very subjective, but I arrived to a definition of art that art is a way of expression of human experiences and feelings and thoughts, and also like the most intrinsic desires. And even though art is like entirely subjective, I have agreed that in all of its forms, it's all about the human experience.
Okay, now listen to Regina and look what she just said, that art involves something related to human. It's a human production, or did I misunderstand, or everybody understood that? Let's see. Okay, anybody from Navajo Preparatory School can answer? I don't know if when I talk you can see the others or not. I don't see anybody when I'm talking. So please, if you want to, okay, now I can see you. Okay, so let's see. Okay, Jordan, tell me, okay, Regina just raised an issue, okay, that if you talk about art, it's necessary human. Do you agree?
I think I would kind of disagree, because obviously when looking at art, there's kind of like different forms of art. So like there's more like the artistic way and like paintings and stuff like that. But then one of the things we kind of talked about within our little group as a school was kind of like um, art's kind of like, it can be like I said, it can be found in many different forms and shapes and stuff like that. So one thing that we that was brought up within our discussion was kind of like animals and like certain things they can do. So I know one of the things we talked about was kind of like um just like the visual representation, I guess. So kind of just like, I don't know, for instance, like spiders, and then like the sounds of like birds that may, to like mimic music and stuff like that. So that was one of the things we talked about. So in regard to answering the question, we kind of felt like it wasn't really necessary, as kind of as like the human element wasn't really necessary, as as like birds in nature and can kind of like do these things and like create art, if you will.
Okay, that's a very interesting issue. But okay, you're saying, for example, a spider's web can be considered art, but now who considers it art?
Right, that was one of the things we considered, because when you look at it, it's kind of humans that would go and interpret that as art. So
okay, so here we have two issues. We have on one side that humans have to consider it art, but the nature itself can have many productions of art. Is that what you more or less what I'm understanding? Yes, or no?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Anybody else wants to say something about this? Okay, Sylvia.
Continuing with this guy's idea, I might say that art as a concept, it's a human construction. So we may consider natural things like spider webs art, but at the end of the day, the concept of art, it's from a human construction. And we may consider something art because of the passion that you put in it. For years, we have been, taking the substance of art, to this characteristic of passion and the human expression towards it. Movements all over time, such as Impressionism or Expressionism, uh, they were one of the greatest inroads into changing artistic rules to be more faithful to human feelings. So I might say that although other things could be considered art that haven't been made by human, the simple concept of it, it's human.
Okay, that's a good distinction. Okay, but then, okay, look at the question again. Let's go to the knowledge question, and it says, is human knowledge always necessary for the production of art? Now, Jordan said that not for the production, right? That's what I understood, that the production of art, it's not really necessary when something else is producing the art. But then you're saying that the concept of art, it's only human. So in order to consider it art, we have to go to the human side of it. Okay, is that what I'm understanding, or is there anything else behind what you're saying?
Yeah, basically it's that my statement, and that for art to be considered art, I think that we have to have this human concept within it for it to be considered art. So it may look like art from made from nature source, but it's not necessarily considered art. It may look like art, but it's not considered art because art is a human construction.
Okay, well, now let's go back to the concept of the question. Remember, we're unpacking it. Okay, so in order to unpack, we need to understand everything. Human knowledge. When we talk about human knowledge, is there any other knowledge that isn't human? Please, anybody? Eduardo? Okay.
Yeah, I would like to complement what Sylvia said. I believe that what differentiates art from anything that can be found with to have a certain poetic beauty or a naturalistic beauty, like a spider's web, is the intention behind it. So the idea of art is the expression of, as my classmates said, human experience and human feelings. And regarding to the knowledge, it is scientifically proven that animals can pass down knowledge from a generation to another.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the creation of art or the appreciation of it, I believe that the human element is required even to some basic degree. Even going back to the most primitive aspects of art being something like a caveman painting, you can say that you require certain knowledge regarding motor skills or about how well the paint of the animals used work, right, with the blood. So there is always some kind of knowledge, even if it's not mathematical or scientific per se.
Okay, very good. You're right, Eduardo, and you consider several different issues. So let's put all the issues separated. Okay, first of all, you said human knowledge. It's not the only one because there are animals that have knowledge, and I do agree with you about that. And the only thing here is we're talking about the production of art. Okay, so let's narrow the question. Okay, we're not talking about appreciation, we're not talking about different currents, we are talking about production of art. Okay, so the thing is, the question is very clear. Is human knowledge necessary for the production of art? Okay, so yes, Franco?
All right. So, in my opinion, I really feel like it's because of our knowledge of emotions that we are able to understand art for what it is. For example, if you get an AI to make the Mona Lisa rather than a human, because the AI is programmed to do something perfect, it's going to always turn out perfect. But if you have a person who is not perfect, that created something that is technically perfect, then it has a much more intense meaning, as well as it is our understanding as humans to able to understand the emotion behind certain things, rather than AI has no emotion. It focuses on logic and fact. So that's just the way I see it.
Okay, very good. But the only thing I disagree with you is art only emotion? Because you're focusing on emotions. Is art only an emotional issue? Yes, Sylvia? And then Constanza. When Sylvia finishes, Constanza can talk. Yes?
Art might not be just an emotional issue, but also it has all your experience behind and all the work that you put on through it. But uh, continuing with my classmates' opinion, by implementing artificial intelligence to art, the substance it's lost. Its main characteristic it's gone, since it's the main characteristic of art or its purpose is to express your emotions and experiences through a visual or a musical medium. And since it's absent, the entire purpose of it it's lost, and everything that was fought through history over and over, it's basically reduced to nothing.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, for example, through decades, we've been fighting for the rules of art to be more flexible, so as we could represent our emotions, feelings, and experiences through art in a more simple or pure way. We can make, as an example, we can take different artistic movements like Impressionism or Expressionism, one of the greatest inroads into changing artistic rules. So they would be more faithful to human feelings with Debussy, Monet, Van Gogh, and people who insistingly fought against the, you know, to put in a box this type of art
Yeah.
to into a certain scheme. And they pursued this freedom of the artist to create following anything that would move them, or they simply did not follow the established rules and create pieces that lasted for decades.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Constanza?
Well, I think that nowadays art has shifted more on another side of the coin, if we put it like that, because during, for example, the classic philosophy era, Plato conceptualized art as mimesis, which is Greek for imitation or copying.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, it seems that that imitation or copying the structures of, I don't know, landscapes,
Mm-hmm.
calling it art, it has shifted towards a more creative approach, because through modern art history, for example, the infamous banana taped to a wall, it has appeared as a representation of how provocative current art tends to be. However, I think that the production of art, it relies more on the viewer's interpretation than the artist's competence. I think human knowledge definitely has a major importance in the production of art. However, it has shifted towards, instead of the conception of the artist, to the viewer's interpretation.
Okay, very good. But here we're dealing with two different issues. We're dealing with the production and the interpretation. So be careful not to wander around interpretation, because that's not the issue we're discussing here. Okay, and I'm making this as probably as an assessor, because if you were writing an essay about this and you focus more on interpretation and less on production, you're going to wander around the topic. So this is just between quotations about something that you need to take care of when you are going to be assessed. All right. So sorry if I interrupt and I say things like this, but I think it's a great opportunity for you to know how we assessors think. Okay. And now, You are very right, Constanza, in saying that if there is no interpretation, probably there wouldn't be production. Because how many artists went unnoticed and you don't even see their works of art because there was no interpretation? So if someone doesn't like the piece of art, probably it won't exist further. Okay, that's right. But then again, we're focusing a lot only on human knowledge. Is there another way to see this? Okay. Amanda, could you think of another way to see this issue and not only about human knowledge? Yes, after Amanda, I see Eliza and then Regina and then Franco. Okay, so
Yeah, it could be more like focused on the part that art is a subjective concept and everyone has like something to give to interpret the art, but not going to the interpretation. We can say that the production of art is a highly individual and subjective process when the artist shares their emotions, visions, and also the context that the authors wants to give. So it could be that we can see the human knowledge as an important part to create something like, for example, like paintings. Most of the paintings have like a message between the brushes and stuff, like when you paint. But it also has to be like a vision or any other message that the painter wants to give.
mhm. Just remember that we're not only talking about paintings, okay? As some of you already focused on music and we're talking about all the arts, okay? So remember they have different interpretations and they have different concepts. Okay, who was next? Okay, Eliza?
Well, for example, anything can produce art. I mean, elephants can paint and they seem to really enjoy it, and human knowledge isn't included in that. But since art is a human concept and humans need to put a meaning behind art or classify it as art, I mean, nothing can be art without a human putting a meaning behind it because it's a human concept. But you could say the elephants are producing art and maybe they consider it to be art, but we can't communicate with them. So how would we know?
Okay, well, that's a very good distinction there because yes, anybody or anything can produce art. Yes, we can even see a spot or we can see something and we can say, okay, that could be art. When there is no production, no purposeful production, or the animals really, for instance, what you're saying, okay, animals are trained to produce art. Okay, but it is important to know that the knowledge of art is the one that gives sense to it. Okay, now who is next? I think Victor is taking track of who has to talk. Okay, yes, Regina.
Yes, I just wanted to say, like, focus more on the question of this, like, discussion. Like, I think it's important to give the definition of knowledge. And I think that knowledge involves, like, this ability to, like, recognize, understand, and interpret, and also to, like, apply the information in a meaningful way or in different, like, context. So I truly believe that knowledge is really essential for the production of art because art requires the intention and the creation of meaning, both of which stem for human thought and also knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're right, Regina. But since we are in a TOK environment, why is it necessary right now to define knowledge? I do agree that it is necessary, but tell me why, if we're discussing knowledge all the time. Who was Eduardo or who was next? Yes?
I just want to follow up with the topic of if we need knowledge to, I would like to say, understand art. So I'm sorry. It's just like there's two audios here. Real quick. Okay, so I believe it's because of our understanding and our knowledge of human emotion and feelings as well as vibes that gives art the meaning it has. Because I feel like, for instance, let's say just like a painting, someone that painted it when he was angry, and there was like certain colors that you could tell that it happened when it was angry. If we didn't have the emotions and the instinct as humans as we do to understand emotions, then that would just be a clump of paint that mean nothing. So it's because we need the knowledge as humans to understand emotions. Let me rephrase. We need the knowledge of emotions and feelings to give art the value that it has for us.
Why do we need the knowledge of emotions? Okay, it's not clear for me what you mean there.
What I'm trying to say is that most art, I personally consider something art if it's able to express emotions and feelings. Like there are some art pieces that have a happy and peaceful vibe, and there are certain art pieces of art that represent like loneliness or like grief or something like that. So if you don't have those elements of emotions, I personally consider it just a picture. But if you were to actually have like emotion behind it, I consider that art, because something that is art for me is the ability to see emotion within it. And if we understand and we have the knowledge of emotions and feelings, then that is necessary to produce art, because otherwise you'd just be painting a picture. Like it would be no different from just like getting a pencil and putting a box with a triangle and calling it a house. But if you were to actually construct a house, like let's say a house that you grew up in, it has feeling, it has an emotion, a feeling of nostalgia, giving it its value. If we get rid of that topic, if we get rid of that part of the art, it'll be completely no different from the box with a triangle, just with more detail, basically.
Okay, but why should it be different? Okay, if I say that this is a house and I'm a painter and I'm a famous painter, why should it not be considered a complete representation of a house?
I personally find it to be way too basic to express any form of emotion. Like respectfully, I don't consider the banana with the tape art, because I may be naive, but I don't really feel anything when I see it. With all due respect to the people that appreciate the painting as well as the painter itself, I personally find it to be kind of sloppy when we're talking to the topic of art, when we can compare it to like Starry Night or the Mona Lisa or a bunch of other world renowned paintings, because those actually represent a form of emotion and feeling. I don't see it with the paint. And you can even argue with the triangle. For me, it just feels too basic to express anything, way too simple,
Okay,
in my opinion, again.
all right. That's very good, but be very careful with when you're saying in my opinion, because when talking about art, there are several currents of art that you would disagree with, but you need to go to experts too. So we need to whenever we talk about an issue like this, it's not only what I consider and what my opinion is, because you're then going to a very basic level of knowledge. Okay, you have to build your opinion based on other things in order for it to be more valid. I don't know if I make sense. Franco, does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I understand your point.
Okay, then who was next? Please. Yes, Constanza?
I just wanted to say that I think the purpose of art it is to create more art. And by saying this, I also consider that the idea of art by expression holds the purest form of human feeling, and but this human feeling transcends the limitation of our consciousness. So to say that I think that human knowledge is not necessary in all cases of production of art, because in this context the canvas turns into a reflective surface that shines a raw, vulnerable moment uh, for example, when you're sad and you want to write it out, you just speak the words without thinking of the implications because you're not acting consciously. And I think that in many expressions of art require this lack of consciousness to make it sentimental, to make it abstract, an abstract idea that doesn't necessarily involves a human knowledge, a concrete human experience, more like the well, not quite like the action, but the experience. I think art can be restricted sometimes to our brains. For example, what Franco was discussing, the banana tape on the wall.
Mhm.
I think that it has a meaning, but the meaning itself is not really very very conscious. It's more you have to think more in order to get the idea of what could the banana mean. And so I think that human knowledge is not necessary for this production of art because some type of art can be unconscious.
Okay, that's a very interesting. That's a very interesting position. But if it's unconscious, can we consider it art? Sylvia wanted to talk, so let's see if we can go on with this conversation, or give the word to someone that can answer it. Yes, Sylvia.
Yeah, I was actually gonna continue Constanza's point about this part of consciousness and art. Yeah, you may not be conscious about what you're doing or that you are producing art, but at the end of the day, you need that human knowledge. For example, she was talking about writing down your feelings if you were sad or if you were mad at someone. This part of writing it and becoming art after you write it, even if that wasn't your intention, it still needs the human knowledge for it. You still need to know how to write. You still need to know how to express your feelings in words. So even if it's unconscious and it becomes art afterwards, you still need this part of human knowledge for it to be considered art.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we're mixing up two things. Okay. Is knowledge unconscious?
I might say knowledge cannot be unconscious because even if you're not conscious that you're using knowledge, you're still using knowledge.
So here we know. Okay. I get what you're saying. Okay. I get what you both of you are saying. You're saying that when you produce a work of art, you can produce it unconsciously. That means that you don't have the intention of producing art. And probably someone sees it and says, okay, this is art. And that's what makes it become art. But whenever we're mixing something with knowledge, it cannot be unconscious. So be careful with that because it goes to a very different direction. All right. I think Eduardo was next. Yes. Okay. Sorry. I know you were raising your hand before, but since it's a little bit confusing, this platform, because whenever someone talks, I don't see the rest of you. So I cannot keep track. So thank you, Victor, for helping me keep track about the conversation. So it's Eduardo first, and then I think it's Eliza later. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. What I wanted to say, I really like the example of the banana. It's a very renowned piece of art called Comedian. And I think it's very interesting when we start considering the value of art, because I think that when we try to say like its purpose or its value, it can be like very subjective. I, for example, lack the expertise or the understanding of what motivated exactly the art and what it's supposed to mean. but still the artist had to have this purpose, this intention, right? And one of the footnotes of this piece of art, it says that its beauty relies on the juxtaposition of mundane items, right? And so if I may not consider it art, but that's more of like my own interpretation. I think that for the production of art, there always has to be some sort of knowledge. And I think that also translates not only to paintings. For example, film is considered art, and you have to have the certain shooting techniques and the angles and the soundtrack and all of that. And even like a statue, you have to have like the mathematical knowledge about it. Even when you go to the most like simplistic aspects of art, you have to have a knowledge, be it subconscious or completely conscious of the using of said knowledge. It is nevertheless always present, I believe.
Okay. Well, some of your teachers are writing down what do you think about Duchamp's pieces. So, okay, that's very different of Starry Night and all the things that you're saying. So, okay, what do you think about them? Eliza?
Well, I was just going to say that human knowledge isn't necessary for the production of art. For example, a 2-year-old could scribble 3 lines on a piece of paper, and then their parents could look at it like, wow, it's the 3 of us. Look at this amazing piece of art. When the 2-year-old had no intention of that when they created it.
Okay, well, you're totally
involved in that.
You're totally right. There's an example of an art gallery in Spain where they asked kindergarten children to paint something and they put it at the gallery, and they said that this was worth like 50,000 euros, and there were people interested in buying it, and it was a kindergarten production. So I totally agree with you, but it's the production then, it's not necessary, but what do we need to consider it art? If it's not in the production itself, what do we need to consider it art? Anybody that can answer this? Well, I have
put meaning behind it.
Yes, Sylvia appears frequently in my screen. So, okay, do you have an opinion about this or no? If not, I think that Nala wanted to say something. Okay, and then also Regina. So,
Hi. Going back to the question of, is human knowledge always necessary for the production of art? Collectively, my group and I, we were discussing the different forms of art, and one of the things that we came across were dances and oral storytelling. So we kind of compared it to our culture as well, having our tradition, our creation stories as like can be seen as a production of art because it includes oral telling stories and as well as dance included into it to explain past events that happened in our culture, such as through our stories we're able to explain like life hardships of what we had back then, but comparing them in forms of animals. And
yes, well, I do understand what you mean, and yes, art traditions. Are you talking about cultural traditions as a form of art?
Yes, because it is human. Hello, wait.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry, it was the audio was going in and out, and so I wasn't sure if you could hear me.
Okay.
But yes, I am comparing culture as a form of art, and since culture comes from the history of humans or like the events in human history, it could be considered human knowledge. And since these different art forms, such as dance and oral storytelling, they're all forms of human knowledge, but is seen as a form of art in a way.
Yes. Okay. Yes, you're right. You're totally right. And there are different expressions of art that are not that do not prevail through time, and others that do. So you're totally right about what you're saying, Nala. Who was next, please? Okay, Amanda.
Okay, so I consider in that in one hand, artistic expression can be seen as a form of knowledge itself, because the artists acquire knowledge and skills through training, practice, and experimentation. And also they learn techniques, study art story, and engage with various artistic concepts and theories. And this knowledge informs their creative progress and influences of the production of art. It could be, for name an example, it could be like the that happens to an expert in music, for example, has this motion to interpret music or songs or the spelling of the songs either, have it vision to connect them with feelings or emotions, and something that and someone that doesn't know about it, it doesn't can be like that connected to it.
Okay. Let's summarize a little bit what we're saying. Okay. When we're okay, what are the main ideas that we have been discussing? Who wants to give me the main ideas so far, so we don't have to lose track? Regina?
Yes, so I think, well, like the main ideas that we haven't talked about like this far, I think it's like the definition of art and how can sometimes be subjective. And also for the production of art needs to be like the interpretation, like the other part. So I think it's one of the most important idea that I want to mention or highlight, like the definition of art, and also the importance of the human knowledge and how it's involved in the production of art. So I think those concepts or ideas are the ones that we have been discussing so far.
Any other ideas? Okay. Any other? Franco or Franco? Sylvia, you want to? Any other?
I think that one of the things we have been coming back every time, it's the importance of emotion, of human emotion into art.
Exactly. Okay, but is the only issue to discuss emotion?
Maybe all the work that people had to put through in order to make art, because even if it's simple, you have to put certain time and certain importance to what you're doing.
Okay. What else is important for art? Because if we go just to emotion, we're going to have a very mild definition. Okay. So what else is important? Yes, Liza?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the interpretation of art. That's very important.
Okay. And what implies interpretation? Okay. What are the things that are behind the word interpretation? Yes, Franco.
It could probably mean like the message the artist is trying to show within the art. Like, for example, it could be addressing a certain issue or just expressing some form of emotion or just spread awareness in general. That could be a main meaning of interpretation. Like, what was the initial idea of the creation of the art? Why was it created in the first place, and what was its purpose?
Okay, I'm typing here. The question is the message the same for the artist and for the viewer or for the receiver? Yes, Luke?
So going back to the question, I would say that the production of art does need human knowledge. For example, within our culture, there are certain rugs and jewelry and artwork that is interpreted in a cultural way by having certain stories behind those artworks and moral teachings.
It's very interesting. Is jewelry considered art? Here we have a new aspect. Is jewelry?
I would say yes, because they do have traditional stories within the designs, and they also tie back to the culture, I mean, the texture of it, and also the material that is made from it.
Okay, but is all your jewelry art? How can we tell what's art in jewelry and what isn't?
Within our cult, oh,
Yes, look.
within our culture, the significance of the color, for example, we use turquoise as as a way to interpret a story, as a way of protection. And
Okay. Yes, I think that here we have something related to indigenous knowledge that we also have in Mexican cultures, and we have different forms of expressing feelings and expressing traditions using different pieces of jewelry. Okay, but what you're pointing out is very important. The color and the meaning for turquoise is only for your it's well, not necessary only for your culture, but it is also related to very, very important issues that you can explain through history. So here we have a different link of human knowledge, because in order to understand some things of art, we also have to rely on history, and we have to rely on traditions, and we have to rely on anthropology or sociology to understand that. So very good, but point that out and underline it, because that's also a good thing to say. Eduardo?
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to come back to is that we're talking about a lot about like the real meaning of art per se. So we mentioned examples of like jewelry, and there's like jewelry for very different cultures that have different meanings. And there's also like commercial jewelry that's just like processed rocks in order to make, you know. So I'd like to like reach the point where we can say that art itself can be interpreted in a billion different ways, and what really matters to be considered art would have to be like the intention to pass down a feeling and experience anything, right? And I'd say that also it's tied to the way it is observed. So a banana that duct taped to a wall can be considered art in the eyes of some, and in the same way, like a child's drawing can be considered art if the intention was to show its well the writers or the drawers painters feelings in that regard. But I feel like that's not really the point itself. I'd argue that when you're talking about the production of art, I mean, of course, for the interpretation, you have to have some sort of knowledge behind its culture and its history that's behind the art. But when we're talking about the simple production, there's always knowledge involved in that. If a child may not know the correct color theory, but it still has to have certain skills, be it the motor skills in order to be able to like draw it, or the emotional skills in order to try to like convey the emotions it's feeling. So I'd argue that human knowledge is always present when we're talking about the production itself. And I think that's where we should be headed towards, in my opinion.
Okay. Good that you mentioned skills. Are skills related to knowledge? Yes, Eduardo, you continue. If you want to say, are skills related to knowledge or not?
I believe knowledge can be any kind of like information you gather. So I believe that knowledge can be a skill, like the skill to draw something, or knowledge can be simply information about how something works. And in that regard, as almost any kind of information can be considered knowledge, I'd say that it is always necessary in the production of art, be it as some sort of skill, some sort of information about certain techniques, etc., etc.
Okay, here we have Claudia said something. Claudia said something. Wrote something. I cannot see it anymore. Okay. Claudia says here, okay, I think they are talking about subconscious. The art is something that is on every human soul. It involves senses and emotions. Even a small child can create art without knowledge about what he's doing. What do you think about it?
I personally think that I agree with this statement, since I consider also that art can be subconscious. I stated it before, and I think that it is that for us humans, even if we create art, and it is harder to interpret the fields of abstract and conceptual art, because it hits the boundaries of our understanding. In this instance, the canvas functions as the subconscious playground, where intuition is king and intellect is secondary. A child can indeed create a sketch of his family, and it can be art. I mean, it is art at the eyes of the mother, and it is art because it's like a reflection of how he's feeling. So I think that yes, that creative progresses could be intuitive rather than completely skillful. I also think that there are three categories of art, and they are re- representation, expression, and form. And it is important to note this because I don't think you need to be incredibly skilled to practice art. I think you just need to feel it and intend to communicate something with that art.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Shakti, sorry about ignoring you. I really it's because I'm not very familiar with this platform, but can you comment on what was just said, or you want to add something else?
It's okay about that. Don't, no worries. Yes, I would like to keep going with what you were saying. For I think art can be conscious and unconscious, but even if it's either of those, it is fueled by knowledge, because we have past knowledge of past art and skills, and even if we don't like um even if we aren't conscious that we are using our knowledge to make it, we have this past information that is giving us material to produce art. Um, yeah.
Okay. So here we have two things. Let me see if I understood. Okay, art can be produced consciously or unconsciously, but you do need the knowledge in order to interpret it or in order to explore it. Is that what you meant?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Okay, thank you. Then let's see who goes next. It's Amanda.
Yes, so just to add something, I believe that it could be another type of making knowledge. The part when the artist creates some things that is not for the liking of the public, and it could be create new knowledge, not just for the artist, it could be also for the public and how they interpreted it, and it's about more for the cultural context, because when you're used to see or watch something about cultural environment, you're not supposed to go further. You only follow that, like the culture that you have. So when the artists explore more further the culture, most of the public doesn't have like the same ideas of him, and these kind of reactions can maybe produce new knowledge about it.
Okay. Well, that's also very interesting because you raised another issue. Art doesn't necessarily have to be liked. That means that art can be ugly. We're not talking only about beauty in art, are we? Okay, then Regina.
Yes, I just wanted to add like something to the comment that Claudia said about the kids and the drawing. That even though sometimes children can often like paint in intuitively or without a technical or formal knowledge, I think this spontaneous and creative approach can truly surprising or produce very surprising and genuine results. However, I think it's important to consider that even children are influenced by experiences and knowledge that they might not be like aware of in an academic sense.
Okay, very good that you're talking about children. Let's analyze this. This was drawn by my niece. Is this a work of art or isn't it? Huh?
Of
Nala?
course, please.
Nala, is this a work of art or isn't it?
Back to did you mean Null or Nalinea?
This one. Okay. Can you all see the painting that I'm holding?
Not the frame.
Yes? Okay. So, is this a work of art or isn't it? It was painted by a 7-year-old. Yes, Shakti?
Yes, I think it's art, and it does have knowledge. Like they knew how to use paint or the brush, how to hold it, what is a canvas, and I think it's important to differentiate what is art and what we think is good or bad art. Like, for example, the example of the banana taped into the wall. Some people don't think it's art, but I think we should just like we could say we just don't like it. We think it's bad art, but it can still be considered as art. Like our personal opinion of the quality of the art um, shouldn't disqualify the fact that it's art.
Okay, so it's interesting about what you're talking about, the quality of the art. But again, okay, any more opinions? Is this really art or isn't it?
Yes, of course, I consider it's art because at the end of the day, it has an intention to express or tell something through the drawing or the eye or the meaning of the star. So I think it has an intention behind and it makes it art because it's an expression, a form of expression that comes from an experience or of a previous knowledge.
Mhm. Do you all agree with what is being said here? All consider this art? Yes or no? Yes. Yes, Constanza?
Yes, I agree. I think that the painting it is art because I think that it's the experiences that the person was trying to express what kinda makes it art. Because in my opinion, as I stated before, there are three categories that define art. Like these categories are the ones that determine that art is art, and the categories are representation, expression, and form. So I think, especially since a young age, when I was also an artist when I was a kid, I drew a lot of paintings, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing an imitation of the elements that I saw in my early life. And for me, expression, it's what you can feel towards the painting. You can really feel that the girl, she saw and she felt these symbols, and she thought of ways she could represent them. And that's where the form it's involved, because she saw a way of including all these elements and making it aesthetically beautiful. I think that's what children do with art. They sort of copy, but they put their own interpretations.
Okay, well, but we're discussing it this very narrowly. I'm going to try to state what you're saying. Okay, you're saying that here you have knowledge involved because this child knew how to use the painting, knew how to draw, and for that requires a kind of knowledge. That kind of knowledge is not intellectual, right? So and also I'm going to give you her interpretation, because of course she has an interpretation of this. All her sisters and she and the two other sisters have blue eyes, so she's representing with the blue eyes the family, and she's representing with the Star of David our background because we're Jewish. So she's representing a lot of things, and she explained that to me. If we go to that, we can consider this art. But if we show this to a critic, to an art critic, will that art critic consider it art with all the knowledge he has or he or she has? Well, will he or she? Yes, Eliza?
Oh, well, you just answered my question that I was about to ask, but that's all.
Yes, okay, I answered the question. Okay, so, but let's see, because remember, we're in TOK, so we cannot see things like this. We have to see them like this, and like this. So, okay, an art critic would consider this piece art or not? Nobody? Yes, Sylvia?
Me personally, I am working on the visual arts course within the IB, and we have been shown how to criticize art, not criticize, but analyze it.
Yes.
And in this on account, I might say that an art critic would totally say this piece it's art, since the criticism of the art, it's like the art doesn't have to convey with the rules of art. It's the opposite way. The rules of art have to convey with the art. So I might say that an art critic would totally agree that this piece of information that you're giving to us, this painting made by your niece, your 7-year-old niece, would be totally considered art, since it's a form of expression that she made through a visual form.
Do everybody agree with this? Yes, Regina?
Yes, I totally agree. Because well, I also want to say like another example. I saw that I think Enriqueta mentioned about the Duchamp's works, and I think that's a great example to what is considered art or not. Because I think these artists challenge like these conventions of traditional art, that they are also like deeply rooted in a conceptual and cultural context. So he was highly informed about the artistic movements and the aesthetic theories of this time, and that influenced the creative decisions and the ability to challenge these established norms. So that's the example that I want to use.
Okay, I would like to hear about the Navajo school. I know you're using one computer, so I guess that you can give us the opinions, okay? Please, contribute to the discussion.
Well, what we think is like the time back to the art piece that you were showing us. We think it's art because it obviously it has a significance behind it. So
So if it has meaning, it's art. That's what you're saying.
yes,
Yes?
and
Is that
interpretation because
is
we
the only
interpret it.
reason? Is that the only reason?
No. So through the interpretation, so we don't really know about the Jewish culture, but we know it has religious significance. And we had Googled earlier what the Star of David would have represented because when you said earlier that the piece was made by a 7-year-old, we kind of assumed that the person was like influenced due to like either parental background or community group background. And we read that the Star of David, the overlapping triangles, it's the Star of David consists of two triangles, one upside down and one pointed up, and it's supposed to represent the relationship between man and God. So we kind of just collectively assume that the painting was to show respect to like their religion and to show self-identity.
Well, that's very good. That what you just did is very good because you went and researched for the meaning of the painting. So that gives us a different concept of human knowledge. You didn't have the background, you went and researched it. Okay, so that's also something that we need to know when someone produces art, because probably what you were saying about the banana taped on the wall or about a blank canvas that is hung on a museum, why is that considered art? Because of the interpretation we're giving. So it's very good that you didn't get the interpretation of what you felt. You researched further. So this is very important for a TOK student to do. Okay? Great. Many points for Navajo School. Okay, so another, okay, is Eduardo?
Yeah, I agree with the Navajo students. I think that the only I think that it can't be discussed if it's art or not, because as long as there's some meaning, even if the author has, or like the creator of the painting has one, created it with a certain like point of view, as long as someone or anyone can find a meaning behind it, that would automatically make it art. I think what we're discussing is not really if said piece is art or not. I think we're discussing more of the quality of it. That's where the art critic enters. So, for example, if we go back to the 1600s or the time period of the Renaissance, an abstract picture, for example, painting. I'm sorry, made by someone like Picasso could have been considered bad quality, or maybe not considered even art by the critics. So it all depends on like the cultural context, on like the time period. So what really changes is if we consider it good or bad art. But as long as there's a meaning, I think it can always be considered a form of art.
Okay, that's very good. And also, Eduardo Perez, that I think is one of your teachers, is saying that be careful with relativism. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, what do we need to take into consideration? Not to judge very into our relative in art in a relative way and give good standards. Okay, what do you think about that? Nobody? Remember, this is important because if we're talking about art, and you're saying, okay, it all depends on the century it was created, it all depends on the meaning, it all depends of many things. Does that make it relative or not? Sylvia, I think, was saying something about that she's studying art as an IB subject. So please help us.
we are talking about relativism, artistic relativism, and how everything in the world could be considered art. But once again, if we consider the formal qualities of art, it might have to fit into some kind of aspects, right? And one of the main aspects of art that I think one of the people in this conference was talking about, that there were three main features for something to be considered art, which was the purpose, the form, and one other thing that I cannot quite remember. If you're still in the meeting, please remind me of it. And yeah, this part is very important. That yeah, it might be seen as art, but for it to be considered art, it has to fulfill these formal qualities that you produced the art within some feelings inside you, and it relates to some of the formal qualities, which are the visual part or the musical part if you're going into music, or the grammar part if you're going into poetry. So it can be relative, but for it to be considered art with substance, it have to follow certain rules.
Okay, so here we have two things to consider. One would be the production, and one would be the recognition. Okay, because when we talk about production, you're saying that it can be conscious or unconscious, right? Sorry, okay, but then the recognition needs rules. You cannot just go and say, "Oh, that's a work of art." It needs to meet certain standards. Is that what you're saying, Sylvia?
Not necessarily standards, but it has to fulfill this part that was the production and the feeling that you're putting into it.
Okay, but these are certain standards.
Yeah, the qualities.
Yes. Mhm.
But I don't think it could be considered a standard because, as far as I know, you have to fulfill a certain level of it, and this one can be a little or a lot, and you don't have to specifically fit a countable number of it.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else that wants to comment on this? Constanza?
Yes, I wanted to comment that about relativism. I think that there's a concept in art created by a YouTuber. It's called hemp art, and it means what is not considered art, but society tries to sell these pieces as art. And this YouTuber, Antonio Garcia, I think it's his name, he uses Yoko Ono as an example because her songs are mostly just like screaming with for many she has no substance, she has no meaning, it's only screaming or sounds that are unconventional. And I think that many pieces in current museums they lack this substance. But also, I think that art is revolutionary, and as I think Sylvia said quite a while ago, art has no rules. Art is meant to break these rules. So I think it's what we can consider as hemp art are pieces that do not look to create art. Well, this is my definition because I think that there are many pieces, especially in the music industry, which is a short format and great for getting money. Many people get rich of this industry, and but there are songs that do not sound like art. Like you wouldn't give anyone just a Nobel Prize Bob Dylan received one, but he received one because he was an insanely good lyricist. But I think the difference between Bob Dylan and an average pop singer is that Bob Dylan was trying to make art. He was living for the art, while the other artists, average artists, they are not trying to make art, they are trying to sell. They are trying, they're not doing art for the purpose of art. So I think that while there are not any rules for art, I think we really need to consider the motive that the person is making the art and also the quality. I think you can listen to the intention of the production and judge the quality by the same three categories that I have been saying: representation, expression, and form.
Okay, what you were saying, Constanza, reminded me of certain things. So let me see how can I explain them to you, and if this makes sense to you as much younger than I am. Okay, Bob Dylan is an icon of the 60s, 70s. So I grew up with Bob Dylan and I loved his songs. And I especially one that is called The Answer is Blowing in the Wind. And it's talking about the concept of war. Okay? So that is a poem. And for us, of those generations, the Nobel Prize of Bob Dylan was well deserved. Meanwhile, people nowadays are complaining about that Nobel Prize, Art Nobel Prize. But okay, let's now analyze Bob Dylan's song, and I'm going to compare it to Despacito. I don't know if the Navajo school have heard of Despacito because it has many interpretations, but it is a very famous song. Okay, now would they be in the same category or not as works of art? To go a little bit out of paintings and about all those stuff. Okay. Is Despacito in the same category as The Answer is Blowing in the Wind? Because Bob Dylan had a Nobel Prize, and of course the authors of Despacito haven't, but it has changed a lot of minds in the last years. Okay, so Sylvia?
Okay, if we analyze both of the pieces from a musical perspective, taking on account, all the accords and everything around it, we can see that Bob Dylan's music is way more complex than Despacito or any reggaeton music around, since of its complexity on a musical point of view, on the theory of music and how it's made, the music sheets and everything around it, it's more complex. The use of the tones, the use of different instruments, it varies a lot. And it's a big difference between Despacito and Bob Dylan's music. Yet, the cultural context made Despacito way more famous. And it was a giant pop around the world. And it actually came from all this mental organization that we had, because Despacito, it's catchy, it's repetitive, and the repetitive on the accords and everything around it made you very drawn into it. So it's a very, I don't know how to explain it.
Probably because of its simplicity. Because since something is catchy, it can be really simple and very easily embedded in your mind. So once something as catchy and simple as that stays in your mind, it is only natural for the human mind and instinct to crave it again because it's so simple and not too complex for us to, question more about it if we choose to. That is.
Continuing with this line and going back to the question, it despite of this difference, they are both in the same artistic line. They are both music at the end of the day, and they both have to be produced. They both have to be thought. They both have to be composed before they were, before we listen to it. So I might say they have different values of complexity and different values of interpretation by the the knowers and the person that listens to the songs. But at the end of the day, they are both on the same artistic line.
Well, and let me tell you something. For me, it was catchier Bob Dylan song because it said all the time, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Look for it. You'll love the song. It's beautiful and it's still updated, even in spite of being produced more than 50 years ago. But okay, uh, Professor Victor is urging us to wrap up because we only have 15 more minutes, all right? I guess that less than 15 minutes. So I would like to see what conclusions can we draw of this exercise. Okay, I would like you not only to talk about it, but to write it down in the chat. So we will have a register, and let's later on share it with all with all the classmates. So, okay, what conclusions can we draw? I know that Constanza and Amanda want to talk, so please, the only thing is talk about about conclusions. Don't go further. Okay, now we have to wrap up. Okay, how can we answer the question then? Okay, is human knowledge always necessary for the production of art? Okay, what conclusions can we draw? Constanza, Amanda, and then the rest of the group. Yes.
Well, yes, I think since what we have discussed, I have come to the conclusion that the idea that the creation of art always requires human understanding is false, but at the same time, it is true. And I think it's because we need to separate the different types of art that exist. We have been talking about intuitive art, like improvisation, which doesn't require a thought process, but it does require the knowledge, even if you don't know that you're using the knowledge, it requires the knowledge and the skill quite a little bit. So I think that while the creation of art itself, talking about an improve and how it's called improvised piece,
Mm-hmm.
I think that uh, you use you use knowledge. Even in that situations, you use your knowledge. You just don't use it consciously, but you do use it. That's why I think that the ability of human creativity to express itself by art transcends the boundaries of knowledge and skill, because I think true art finds its deepest resonance in the indescribable domain of emotion, intuition, and the combination of our experience, like the culmination of our creative process. It's our own identity, whether expressed through music, visual arts, performance, or whatever type of art we're talking about.
Okay. Yes. Now, Amanda.
Yes, so well, by summarizing what we were talking about, I consider that it's not that important to have like a human, to be involved, the human knowledge into the creation of art, because while there are differing perspectives on the relationship between art and knowledge, it is evident that art can serve as a form of knowledge as well. Like if you see art, then you acquire the knowledge before seeing the art and also by creating it. But also it provides insights into human emotions, community, and the world, and actively contributing to the generation of knowledge through artistic research. So I think that it should be like for the both parts. Like when you are creating art, you need like a little bit of knowledge, but also you acquire this knowledge before seeing the art. Could be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but what you're saying, okay, You need knowledge to go to a museum and appreciate a work of art.
Not in that point. You will also need like something like, oh my god, I love this kind of artist, so I will go to the museum. You have like a minimum of knowledge about the artist maybe, but you don't need to have like the knowledge to go to a museum and be an spectator, uh,
Mhm.
be the public for that art.
Okay, Regina.
Yes, I just wanted to conclude and to go back to the question because I think we have been discussing many topics around it, but not specifically the question or arrive to an answer. So I just wanted to say that I truly believe that knowledge is always necessary for the production of art for three reasons. The first one is because I think art requires the intention and the creation of meaning, both of which stem from human thought and knowledge. Another reason is because knowledge provides the technical skills that are necessary to express the ideas in an effective way through art. And the last reason I want to say is that knowledge encourages conceptual exploration and critical reflection on social, political, and even in philosophical issues through art. So at the end of the day, knowledge is always present when you want to produce art. We have been discussing about what is art, the quality of art, but we have not discussed about why knowledge is always necessary or if it's necessary. But in my case, in my opinion, and in what I think and what I have been reading through these weeks of investigation for this debate, I truly believe that knowledge is always necessary for the production of art for the reasons that I just mentioned.
Excellent, excellent summary, Regina. I would love if you could type it, just like an outline or something, so everybody can see it, because that's exactly what we need to know. You're talking not only about one type of knowledge, you're talking about several types of knowledge. And that's important to know, because if we just narrow down knowledge to concepts, then it's not necessary. But you were talking about skills, you were talking about several things, so it's very important for us to get that summary. So please type it. Okay, then Madison International School is raising their hands. So okay, Sylvia.
Yeah, backing up Regina, I would like to make this quite quick. So I'm literally just backing up her opinion with some of, facts. So human knowledge is extremely necessary and almost intrinsic, taking into account that for centuries it has been a representation of human feelings and beliefs within the cultures. And over time, the conception of this has changed to give more freedom to the artists to express their emotions freely through any artistic medium, whether plastic, visual, music, I don't know, any type of art has been progressed, it has evolved for it to become one of the most pure representations of human emotion and human nature.
And because how time evolves so fast, as further history goes, the more we're able to understand. So through time, history has become modernized for us today to understand the art that the people of today are making.
And answering the question of is human nature always necessary for the production of art, we have been discussing it for a long while, and Regina gave a very good and structured answer, and I would just like you to back it up with history facts.
Okay, very good. Okay, and what about Navajo School, Navajo Prep School? Okay, anything that you would like to add to the discussion or to the conclusions more than the discussion?
From this discussion and our overall conversations, we also concluded as well that human knowledge is needed for the production of art, and to reference the other schools as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
To reference the other schools as well, we do need human knowledge to interpret these, to interpret art. Like the example you brought up earlier with the museum, like why would you go to a museum without knowing the background of some of the paintings? Because then you're just kind of there to appreciate the visual of it instead of like actually understanding it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So it's one thing is to like it, and another one is to understand it. Okay, I will take the last 4 minutes to give you some to point some things out that I consider important. Number one, all of you are thinking about art as mainly made of emotions, and it's not necessarily the case. Be careful with that, because then you're narrowing that down what art means. Okay, as it was said, it has to do with many other things, not only emotion. Okay, so please take that into consideration, because you can make that mistake in any written form, in your essays, or in any, or in your expositions, and that would lower your points. So be careful. Okay, it is very important. Emotion is very important, but it is not the only issue. Okay, and also intuition. Okay, you're focusing a lot on emotion or intuition, and it's really important to go further. Okay, that is just a suggestion, and it's feedback on your comments. On the rest of this exercise, really, I'm amazed at your knowledge, at your research, and at your contributions, and how all of you learned something. I think that you learned something. So I would like to in 3 minutes, to give you the time to tell me what you've learned from this experience. Apart now from the debate, and apart from any other things, what did you learn? Yes. Okay, Constanza, then Madison, I think he wants to talk too. So, okay.
Well, I think I learned a lot about, how to listen properly to other person's opinions, because I think it is a skill. Communication is a skill that we develop until we're older. I think that communication, it's a skill that it is still like you can never learn it completely. And this experience, it has given me lots of new thoughts, lots of new knowledge. I didn't knew many things, or it made me think a lot about art, about the purpose of art, about the interpretation of art. Many questions. I also think that the experience, it like stimulated my brain to continue creating new ideas and sharing them, and also it helped me learn how to conclude an argument, so as to summarize the information, but maintaining uh, like an open approach to new ideas.
Okay, thank you, Constanza. Okay, Sylvia?
Want to say, I'm sorry. So this is the feedback of the conversation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we would just like to say that this was a very interesting and unique moment for us to learn and understand different perspectives of others, because for us, once we get really comfortable with a certain environment, such as our classroom, then certain debates become predictable at some point. So it's nice that the group of us who take a certain interest in the theory of knowledge topic are able to come and discuss with their own certain mindsets, which are completely different from the rest of the class. And of course, even more obvious, the fact that we are in different areas. Like, for instance, one of them is from Mexico City, you are from Monterrey, and we are from Merida, Yucatan. So it's really nice that we are able to come together into this like hour and a half meeting in order for us to discuss our opinions and even to change our certain perspectives, as well as to keep an open mind. So this was a really good way for us to learn to always keep an open mind and to always take into consideration the perspective of others, even though we may not agree with it at first. if we learn with a certain fact and the logic, we could alter our mindset and thus, evolve from there.
For me, this experience was very important since it was, I don't know how to explain it. The environment was very nice, and I could see how everyone that was in this meeting was really prepared for this, and that really made me feel very, very happy about everything.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah.
Because with our class, everyone is really unprepared, unlike us. So this was a really it's nice to be at the same level instead of, it's in the least narcissistic way possible where we're up here and our students and the rest of our classrooms are up here. It's nice that everyone's in the same level so we can move at a pace that we're all comfortable with, rather if people are faster or slower.
I feel this whole conversation was very dynamic and I learned
Extremely.
a lot. Some of the people had a very, very interesting way to express themselves. I could point out Regina because, oh my God, she's good. She's good. And it was a very, very nice experience for me to be here, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about topics I was familiar with, but I didn't have the time or the interest to get deep on them. So this was a very nice and big opportunity for me to learn a lot from other people of my own age.
Thank you. And I would like to hear about our New Mexico participants. Okay. What did you learn?
Okay.
So
So we want to say that we learned a lot from the discussion to inquire more about what art truly is. And during the discussion, we also were very insightful and we were able to understand other people's perspective from a global view, if you will. And to conclude, we also want to say that we're grateful for this opportunity and thank you for giving us time to discuss what the knowledge and art truly means to everyone else.
Well, and thanks to you because you really gave us a very different perspective, very different from Mexican students. Okay, so you added up a lot to the discussion. Okay, Professor Victor, I don't know if it's time to finish or is there time for the others to say something? Victor, yes? Okay, well, I cannot hear Victor, but I guess that time is over. And I thank you all for the opportunity. If you learned, you don't know how much I learned from all of you. So thank you very much because a TOK teacher is only a facilitator. The real knowledge comes from you. So thank you very much for everything. Okay, and I hope I see you again sometime in this life. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.